If you have a cell phone, can you take it out and stand up? If you've got an iPad in your lap, put that down. Is there anybody not standing up? You all are confident, secure people, but we will not need you for the next 18 minutes. Thank you so much. Just kidding. If you have an iPhone 5, sit down. These are the fancy people. Dinner is on them. If you have any other kind of iPhone, go ahead and sit down. I would be out too. Apple thanks the Methodist Church for their sponsorship. These are the average Apple Joes, maybe even thrifty if you've got like the 3G or the 3GS. If you have an Android, sit down. These are the practical people, or they just hate Apple, let's be honest, you know? Okay, if you have a Windows phone, sit down. These are the dreamers, okay? If you've got a boring smartphone like a BlackBerry, sit down. These are the doers. And everybody else, I have no idea what you're carrying. So thank you. You guys can sit down. You all probably most know what a phone is supposed to do. So thank you, guys. Give yourselves a round of applause. I love exercises like this because it reveals something telling. Communication technology has a level of diversity, and at the same time, it is all around us. No matter how frustrated we get with the beeps and the buzzes and the ringing, no matter how many times you've wanted to chuck that phone out the window, you haven't done it yet. Or maybe you have. Merry Christmas to you, sir. But if you had gone to a conference on creativity and innovation a couple years ago, it would be a given that everyone was an early adopter with 2 to 6 Twitter accounts who were really excited about the release of Google Wave. I had no idea how to use it, but I loved Google Wave and I miss it greatly. But if you go to a conference like this today, no doubt you'll hear about things like technology fasts and talking to people face to face and making things out of real things like wood or felt or hemp, depending on where you come from. But almost everybody in the room had a cell phone on them. And I get it, you got to stay in contact, emergencies, you never want to know when President Obama is going to text you and ask you to save the world. We've got to stay in connection. But how many of those phones come with a data plan whether you want it or not? And how many of you, once you have that data plan, only use it for Google Maps or the Weather Channel? I didn't think so. There's a lot of Angry Birds being played in bathrooms around the nation. I work in campus ministry, and I have college students that for a class were required to create a Twitter account. Actually required. And the point is this. Technology is a part of our lives whether we want it to be or not, and more importantly, it's a part of the lives of the millions of people we want to reach with the good news of the gospel of Christ. And our relationship with God and our relationship with one another is based on communication. Really, every relationship is. God reveals God's self to us, and then we, with the power and presence of the Holy Spirit, tell that story to one another. And so I think if anything affects the way we communicate, it has the power and potential to affect our faith experience and the way that we live in community with one another. In the fall, 65 years to the day after Chuck Yeager first broke the sound barrier, he got back in a modern-day jet and re-broke the sound barrier. And the media asked him, how is it different? And he said, cockpits don't change. You just use the controls to make the airplane do what you want to do. Now, if you're an engineer that worked on a cockpit over the last 65 years, you might be kind of offended. But he has a point. Technology is simply a tool, and we can choose to use those tools however we wish. I mean, we use hangers to keep our clothes off the floor, or at least that's what they're supposed to be there for, whether you use them for that or not. But you can also bend a hanger to unlock a car from the outside. Now, if that's a friend or AAA helping you out, that's awesome. Not so awesome if someone's doing it to your car right now. But the same, technology, the pastor Shane Hipps in his book Flickering Pixels defines technology as anything that stretches, extends, or amplifies some human capacity. And I love that definition because really everything is technology. Clothing is technology. It stretches our ability to be outside and withstand the elements like the sun and the rain and the wind. Bowls are technology. They extend our ability to hold soup in our hands. And if you work at a church or a school or a community center that gives children access to glitter, you are eternally thankful for the vacuum because it amplifies your ability to pick that stuff up, right? Let's be honest. The truth is communication technology is the same. Let's try something out. Can you stand up? Can you stand up? Yes, you. Perfect. And can you stand up? Yeah, you. Yeah, perfect. I want you to ask her a really simple question, that's fine, and can you answer that question? Anthony, perfect. Communication, it's great. Now let's do it again, but everybody talk amongst yourself for like 10 seconds. Ask another question. Ready, go. And scene. Okay, that didn't work out so well, right? But if we did, thank you guys, you can sit down. Thank you for your participation. If we did this a third time and you guys exchanged text messages or emails or phone call, the message would be delivered because that technology is designed to take your voice from this side of the room to that side of the room and your ears from this side of the room to that side of the room and vice versa. It's what it does. It's what it's designed to do. And this may sound really, really simple, and it is. But I think the idea is that we too often take for granted what's actually happening when we use technology. When you tweet or post from an unprotected Facebook account or something, it's like you're shouting off a mountaintop. And to be honest, y'all shout some pretty strange things from the mountaintops, right? Well, let's say you're out to dinner with a significant other or a good friend, maybe even tonight. You have a lovely post-Valentine's Day dinner planned because you didn't want to send the wrong message last night. This is just a nice dinner. Okay, and you get a text message. You do what everybody does. You pull your phone out, you hold it below the table line, stare into your crotch, because that's not weird. You check it and you slide it back in your pocket or your purse. And we move on with dinner. No big deal, right? Just a second. But what happened? You left. For that 1 second, your eyes, your mind, your attention was somewhere else. Or if you want to think about it in reverse, you invited the message sender to the table, which, depending on the type of meal and who sent the message, could be kind of awkward, bordering on creepy, maybe really creepy. But what if it happens again? And what if it happens again? And what if you reply? What if they're looking right at you and you're reading it? What if it's an email? What if it's a phone call? What if you're just surfing Pinterest, which I call Google for Girls? On the campus of the university, it takes a second, let it wash over. This week on the campus of the University of Florida, I saw a guy and a girl, hand in hand, fingers interlocked, and she was using the index finger to swipe through her phone. After a while, you start to get the idea that perhaps you're not the most important thing to them in the moment, right? But with all tools, context is key. You can hit a lot of things with a hammer, some of them good, some of them are illegal. And you can make fun of Twitter. It can be shallow, it can be a waste of time, but we've seen it be a powerful tool for people who have very little freedom of speech. We've seen Twitter and YouTube report events in Egypt and Syria that the world needs to know about. Maybe you and your group have gone on a mission trip, and you've used a blog to send your experiences back home. You know what you're doing? You're bringing the eyes, the minds, and really the hearts of the people who read your blog to where you are. If you had a full comprehension that that's what's going on, would you have used it differently? Would you have used it better? Would you have planned? Or are we all just flying by the seat of our pants? Or to make it more personal, I'm sure that we have all had a conversation with someone on the phone or via Skype that we couldn't physically be with, a friend or a family member halfway across the nation or maybe in the hospital. I've Skyped with students while they study abroad or serve in the Peace Corps, and that's a great way for them to stay connected to a community that means so much to them and is supporting them while they're gone. But with all things, context is key. We have to choose the right tools for the right context. And the better we know our tools, the easier the work is going to be. I struggle with multi-campus churches that beam their singular pastor into all locations at once, because we are proclaiming the love of an infinite God who became incarnate in person with us, and we're delivering that message via a screen. But at the same time, multi-campus churches unite larger communities. And they also break down the mega-sized worship services that offer very little community and intimacy. You see, we have to understand what is actually going on. And so maybe it becomes the responsibility of those churches to create incarnational experiences. In Exodus chapter 20, in the passage recording the Ten Commandments, God tells us not to create any images or idols to worship, even if they're meant to represent God, because they don't. Anything we could ever create is finite, and God is not. The medium, the finite creation, and the message, the infinite God, there's a dissonance there. The intent and the impact are disconnected, and God cares deeply about the impact of the medium. In Mark chapter 2, Jesus tells us not to put new wine into old wineskins because the wineskins will burst and we'll lose both. Now, there's a lot of really deep commentary here on history and religion and the way religion is practiced, but let's not miss the surface level idea. If the content and the container are disconnected, we run the risk of ruining both, no matter how good either one is. How often have we, maybe not we in this room, but we the church have fought culture wars over what's good to be on TV or radio or the internet? We fight about specific songs or artists or TV shows or ideological points of view, but are we ever critical about the medium that carries our message? Not critical like tearing down, but thoughtful and reflective and constructively critical. You see, because those mediums carry power and they do things. Let's start with a low-tech example and see if we can get where we're going. Like, for example, chairs. I love chairs. They're my favorite example. The message of every chair is sit down. But what does the medium of the chair say? If it's a nice leather booth at a fancy restaurant, it says, come on in and sit down and stay a while. You are welcome here. The hard plastic booths at a fast food restaurant say, eat quick and get out because someone else needs your seat. You see, they make their money off quantity sold and the fancy restaurant doesn't, or at least that's not their top priority. I've probably ruined every restaurant now. You walk in, take a look at the seats, and know exactly what they expect out of you. But what does the stage say? The message of the stage could be anything. This could be a ballet or a preacher or a teacher, or a political rally or a band. But the message of the stage says this is where your attention should be. When you add in lights and microphones and screens and all these things, it says what's going on up here is really important. And the fact that you're sitting 3 feet down in the dark without a microphone says you're maybe a little less important than what's going on up here, whether that's the case or not. And we wonder why our worship experiences have become spectator shows. Perhaps all of the things, the screens and the smoke machines and the bands and the sound systems and the lights, all these things that we've designed to bring people in are actually working counter to the very thing we want to achieve. What is it that we're inviting them to? My campus ministry records and podcasts our sermons. And it's a great tool for students who want to check us out or get to know us, or a student that overslept on a Sunday or is gone for the summer. But what happens if one of my students graduates, moves to a new town, and never joins a faith community there and instead just subscribes to our podcast? I'm sure Narcy and I would be really flattered, but that's not the kind of disciples we've been called to make. See, the message of a screen or of a recording is you don't have to be there to be there. But is that how Christian community works? So I love that I have a positive example to share with you. I had a student who graduated from law school and got a job in Daytona Beach and said, Dan, where should I go to church in Daytona Beach? Did I send him to UMC Church Finder? No. That's a great tool, but he wasn't looking for a name and an address and a website. I would hope if you graduate law school, you can find that on your own. You never know. But he was looking for a personal recommendation from someone who had experience with the hospitality, the worship, and the discipleship of the community. And so I turned to our two connections, the church and Twitter. I said, FLUMC folks, where should a new law school grad go to church in Daytona Beach? And incredibly, our newly elected and appointed Bishop Ken Carter retweeted my question. And through the conversation that followed amongst our connection, I was able to give 3 recommendations for him to check out. You see, every tool we have access to has pros and cons. They all carry our messages, but some of them are really simple and surface level. Some of them are deep and complex and do things to our message, and we need to become aware of those things. What if we matched the time and effort and passion we put into content creation by understanding the tools that we have at our disposal? What if you or someone on your staff matched your level of sermon prep or graphic design or research and data collection by understanding and utilizing the tools that will make the job easier, that will help you accomplish the things that you have been called by Christ to do? See, our God has used stone tablets, burning bushes, dreams, talking donkeys, liars, prostitutes, friends, family, organized religion, disorganized religion, not to mention God's own Son, Jesus Christ, to give us a message of love and of grace. We worship and serve an immensely creative God who has gone to extensive lengths and used every conceivable medium to be present and active with us, doing the work of justice, reconciliation, and redemption. And I believe that we are called not simply to be stewards of this creation, but of that creativity as well. Thank you.